The afternoon sun filtered through the smudged windows of Sweetie's bakery as Diane Miller stood at the counter, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, but I need to cancel the birthday cake order for Saturday." Her fingers trembled as she clutched her purse, knuckles whitening with the effort of holding herself together. The bakery, with its warm scents of vanilla and cinnamon, had always been a place of joy for Diane, but today it felt like the sight of another defeat. Cancel? "But Ms. Miller, we've already started on the baseball design. Tommy's turning 8, right?" Nancy, the bakery owner, peered over her reading glasses with concern. She had known Diane since high school and had watched her struggle as a single mother since Tommy's father walked out 3 years ago. "I know, and I'm so sorry. Something came up with work and I just—" Diane's voice cracked. She couldn't bring herself to say that her hours had been cut at the hospital where she worked as a nurse's aide, or that the choice had come down to the cake or the electricity bill. "I'll still pay the deposit. I know it's short notice." What neither woman noticed was the tall man in the corner booth, his attention caught by the quiet exchange. James Harrington had stopped at the small-town bakery on a whim, while his driver filled up the car at the gas station across the street. Dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary, he seemed out of place among the gingham curtains and faded linoleum. The tech billionaire was passing through on his way to a conference, his mind usually occupied with stock prices and acquisition deals. But something about the woman's posture, shoulders rounded forward as if bearing an invisible weight, made him listen more carefully. "Don't worry about the deposit, honey," Nancy said, reaching across the counter to squeeze Diane's hand. "You can use it another time. Is Tommy very disappointed?" "He doesn't know yet," Diane whispered, wiping quickly at her eyes. "I'll figure something out. Maybe cupcakes from the grocery store. I just hate to let him down again." James watched as she left the bakery, her head held high despite the obvious distress. Through the window, he saw her climb into an aging sedan, sit motionless for a moment, then rest her forehead against the steering wheel. "Tough situation?" James asked casually as Nancy approached to refill his coffee. "Oh, you have no idea," Nancy sighed, glancing toward the door. "Diane works harder than anyone I know. 2 jobs, raising that sweet boy alone. Tommy's been talking about this birthday party for months. Baseball theme. He's crazy about it. Keeps saying this is the year the Red Sox scouts will discover him," she added with a sad smile. "Diane's been saving up, but life keeps throwing curveballs." James nodded, his coffee forgotten as he gazed out the window. At 42, he had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. His charitable foundation donated millions each year, but it had been ages since he'd connected with the human impact of financial struggle. The foundation staff handled the details. He just signed the checks. "What kind of cake was it going to be?" he asked suddenly. "Baseball field design. Green frosting for the grass, white for the bases. Tommy's name on the pitcher's mound." Nancy's eyes brightened. "I was going to make little fondant players too. That boy deserves something special." James pulled out his wallet. "I'd like to pay for the cake and whatever else would make a great party." Nancy stared at him, recognition slowly dawning. "You're just someone who remembers what it's like to look forward to a birthday," he interrupted with a gentle smile. "My mother worked 3 jobs. There were years when a cake was a luxury we couldn't afford. Within minutes the plan expanded. Not just the cake, but a complete party at the local baseball field." James made calls while Nancy contacted Diane's best friend Kelly to coordinate. By the time he left the bakery, James had set aside his conference plans for the weekend. Something about this situation had stirred memories he'd long buried beneath spreadsheets and board meetings. 3 days later, Tommy Miller woke up on his 8th birthday, expecting little more than his mother's traditional pancake breakfast. The past few months had been full of disappointments. Baseball camp cancelled, their planned move to a better apartment delayed, his mother's increasingly exhausted smiles. He'd overheard enough to understand that money was tight, though the concept remained abstract to his young mind. "Ready for your birthday surprise?" Diane asked, her eyes sparkling in a way Tommy hadn't seen in months. "Pancakes?" he guessed, already grateful for the small tradition. "Better." "Get dressed, baseball gear today." Tommy's heart raced as they drove toward the town's baseball field. He spotted balloons tied to the fence and a small gathering of people. "Mom, what's happening?" Diane simply smiled, emotion making it impossible to speak. When they parked, Tommy recognized his friends from school, his little league teammates, and several adults from the neighborhood. "Surprise!" they shouted as he approached. The baseball field had been transformed. Her tent housed a table laden with food and drinks. Baseball-themed decorations hung everywhere. Tommy's friends rushed forward, baseball mitts already on their hands. "We're having your party at a real baseball field," Diane explained, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. Someone very kind wanted to make your birthday special." Tommy was speechless, his eyes wide as he took in the scene, especially the magnificent cake centerpiece, exactly like the one he'd described to his mother months ago while flipping through Nancy's cake catalog. What Tommy didn't immediately notice was the tall man standing off to the side, watching with an unexpected lump in his throat. James Harrington had spent billions on business deals without blinking, but the pure joy on this child's face affected him in ways he couldn't articulate. The day unfolded with impromptu baseball games, presents, and food. Local coaches volunteered to run drills with the kids. A professional photographer captured moments that would become cherished memories. Through it all, James remained in the background, speaking briefly with Diane to explain his impulse at the bakery. "I can't possibly thank you enough," Diane said, watching Tommy run the bases with abandon, his face flushed with excitement. "You don't need to," James replied simply.